This past Sunday, I was in the Mail on Sunday talking about ISAs, in particular the rise in ISA millionaires, in a piece called Join the ISA Millionaires. That's right, you can join the ISA millionaires today and I'll show you exactly how to do it. It's easy. Or is it? Now, papers are notoriously bad at getting across the full picture. I mean, it's in their nature not to. I need to set the record straight. Let's talk about how I got in the paper in the first place, how you could join this famous ISA Millionaires Club, and what I think the paper got wrong, because it could change your view on ISAs and me forever. So picture this, it's last Sunday and I'm that anxious about going to grab a copy of the paper to see what they printed, I leave it till 3:30 PM on a Sunday, 30 minutes before the shops close. That shows how often I buy newspapers. So I rush down to Sainsbury's, there's a Sunday Mirror, the Telegraph, the Financial Times, but no Mail on Sunday. Uh-oh. At this point, I sprint over to the petrol station in the hope that no one's been there to pick up their local paper. One for my mum, and more so I don't end up losing them. Mum, I'm in the paper. I flick through the pages almost in disbelief that I'm actually in the paper, and then I see this. Yep, this beautiful picture of me looking half asleep has been printed over 600,000 times.
Yep, that's me.
But I've made it there. Some people may think it's a bit silly, but from someone who's been making videos in the spare bedroom for 3 years, being featured in a national paper is huge for me. So how did we get here? And I know what you're already thinking. The Daily Mail, really? Which, to be honest, it was the response I got from half of the people that I mentioned it to. But you know me, I'm like a kid in a candy shop. If I get the chance to reach more people who might open an ISA, start investing, and maybe go on to improve their lives for the better, then I'm going to take it. Now, my biggest concern when doing this was I really have no editorial control over what's going to be published. The papers are such a fast-paced operation, you're in an article, the paper's out, and it's on to the next story. And the article has ended up causing some people to leave comments like this one online. Someone needs to tell him that life is for living and not for existing, which is definitely not the case, and I want to set the record straight. I want to clear up a couple of issues and points I think weren't covered in the article and explain what it was about, and I want to tell you the full story. And I want to preface this by saying I don't particularly think it's the paper's fault, it just is what it is. Possibly not the best medium to give the full picture. Okay, so here is what happened. A couple of weeks ago, I was referred by InvestEngine to a journalist over at the Daily Mail. All I was told is they're putting together an article using stats found about the rise in ISA millionaires in the UK. This was using some of the latest data that InvestEngine had uncovered about the number of ISA millionaires growing after submitting a Freedom of Information request to HMRC, which allows you to request information they have on file. And the data they found was actually quite interesting. In the past 5 years, the number of ISA millionaires has risen 380%, almost quadrupled. In 2016-17, there were just 570 ISA millionaires, and in 2021, there were 2,760. 2021 is the latest period which they have data available for. I suspect, as of today, those numbers are likely even higher. The market value of stocks and shares ISAs has also been climbing rapidly, while cash ISAs hasn't really been going far at all. I think what this data shows is quite interesting. There's a catch-up period of time where people weren't aware of stocks and shares ISAs, and now that compounding is coming into effect. And of course, there's now more people opening stocks and shares ISAs than ever. So based on this information, I was asked to be a case study as someone who is aiming to become an ISA millionaire myself. But there was a problem, because that's really no longer my goal. I did explain this and they were happy to proceed and just change that in the article. From here, I had a preliminary phone call to prepare me for the interview, in which they explained what would happen and a general idea of what would be asked. And then within a few hours was the interview. I was asked about my savings and how much I had invested, which I was slightly hesitant about, but hey, it's all here anyway. And they also wanted to know why I wanted to become an ISA millionaire. I explained that was no longer my primary goal. While I still want to hit $1 million in total, I'm opting to split it between a SIP, a lifetime ISA, and an ISA account, as it's more tax efficient. I benefit from the free bonuses in the lifetime ISA and the SIP along the way, which will help me end up with more money in the long run. And from an inheritance tax standpoint, a SIP is also way more tax efficient. If you died with $1 million in your ISA, anything over $325,000 would be subject to 40% tax. So God forbid you did have more than $1 million, you can wave goodbye to $270,000 straight away. I mean, hopefully you wouldn't have that in your account. I'd rather you spend that on back-to-back world cruises, but you get the gist. The SIP is more tax efficient in this way, but honestly I don't think passing money on should be a main concern when doing all of this anyway. You should definitely be using the money to improve your own life. My primary reason really is that growth is better using multiple accounts than just an ISA, but anyway. At this point in the interview she asked, "What do you do for work?" And I was thinking, well, do you not know what I do? I explained I'm a web designer, but I also spend around half of my week making YouTube videos and talking about investing. And she didn't have a clue. Honestly, I did question at this point whether I was the right person to fit the narrative. Is someone who's just saving away for this ISA millionaire status blindly a better inspirational story than someone who has multiple accounts, understands the journey inside and out, really what they need for the story? But they seemed happy to go ahead anyway. I talked about how I'd saved 100k in an ISA twice and I was now aiming to do 100k in my SIP, and how I lost my allowance taking it out for a house deposit. I talked about my lovely loss of £25,700 investing in Russia right before the war. I love my brutal transparency, much to my own demise, as well as some of the other investing mistakes that I made, how I felt like I'd missed out by not investing in big tech stocks, and now how I've reached this point in my life where I'm favouring low-cost index funds to build my wealth reliably. Of course, the article didn't mention some of my biggest wins, like 30 to 40% returns on UK stocks post-COVID, but that's neither here nor there, and I don't mind. But she did mention that I have a YouTube channel which gained us a whopping 50 new subscribers out of 600,000 plus. Not the best conversion rate, but hey, I'll take it. The next day they sent out a photographer to come and meet me to take my photo for the paper. I met him in the local park, pouring down rain, not quite the millionaire club you're thinking about, and he made me do some poses, including one jumping from a climbing frame, which, when I mentioned it to my girlfriend, she shrieked in horror. You could literally just see it now, me jumping off a climbing frame like a complete plonker, saying, "Join the ISA Millionaires Club." And the next thing, the article's published, titled, "Join the ISA Millionaires Club." Now, what's this article all about? Because I'm pretty sure you're pretty excited to join it, right? So we know there's 2,780 people in the ISA Millionaires Club in 2021. It almost sounds like the 1% elite club, right? Well, it's actually 0.004% of the population, even less. And actually, I don't fully agree that it's even the elite. I mean, realistically, they couldn't give two sniffs about putting £20,000 into an ISA and even £60,000 into a pension. It really isn't much to them. They're likely going to be investing in other things on, let's face it, more tax efficient things. But I do 100% think it's mostly higher earners or very frugal people. Even the quote they used from Vanguard says it perfectly. To reach £1 million within 30 years, you would need to invest £1,120 a month and achieve a return of 5.5% after fees. And in our current economic climate, while 1,120 sounds brilliant, the vast majority of people can't afford to invest anywhere near that figure. Even when she asked me point blank in the interview, can most people achieve this? I said no. Given average luck, I could have £1 million in my ISA by age 50, if I saved £20,000 per year, which is extremely ambitious, and not something I think I'll be able to do every year. It's much more likely it'll be with a combination of a lifetime ISA and a SIP, where I have that added bonus. But that doesn't account for other things I want to do in my life too, like buy a new car, do up a property, and travel. What I do think the article did particularly well is highlight how good a stocks and shares ISA has been compared to a cash ISA. This is for two reasons. The first is that cash ISA rates have been pretty poor for years. It's only now that the bank rate is much higher we're seeing the good rates being offered. The last time I remember it being around 5% in a cash ISA was when I was around 16 to 18, which is over 10 years ago, in which time the stock market has performed extremely well. Also, most people don't realise that historically you've always been able to put more in a stocks and shares ISA than a cash one. It's only recently the amount has become more equal. That's why the amount in stocks and shares ISA has been able to build up much more rapidly over the last period, and more ISA millionaires have been created. It'll be very interesting to see how that number rises and falls, as in theory, those with over $1 million should be nearer retirement age, and drawing down on that figure and dipping back down under $1 million. Unless of course they're lucky enough to just live on the interest. So why could this change your view on ISAs and me? And this is what I want to clear up. Okay, so while I look like the absolute poster boy for an ISA millionaire in this article, it's really not what I want to be. Sure, showing people that I'm able to build up an investment portfolio and how they can do the same is fantastic. But remember, I also have no pension, at least not until recently. While most people paid their company pension from age 18 or early 20s when they started saving and working, I had nothing, and all I did was save into an ISA. Not even with the intention of having $1 million, mostly out of fear that something would happen to my business and I would need the money. Retiring wasn't even particularly on my radar, at least for the first 5 years of investing, even though it should have been. I started my own business right out of university. I've never had a full-time job. I've had to work for every penny I've earned and saved. And while that could sound like a sob story, it isn't, because I realise I'm also very privileged. I was able to live at home, I did pay towards bills, but I did that until age 26. A lot of people don't have that luxury. I had stability and environment to do well, and I've been fortunate that I've been able to work and earn a decent living since. I'm by no way a rock star, and most years I haven't even been a higher earner, I just saved a lot. And I mentioned this in the interview, which wasn't covered, but I am not frugal. The last line says, Chris hasn't bought a car in over a decade. I mean, my car's only 9 years old, and I bought it 4 years old, so I don't know how that works out. The reason I have money to invest is I just don't blow money very much. I'll buy an iPhone when I want one every few years outright, or spend money on holidays. This year, we've easily spent over £12,000 on holidays, which I don't regret. And it may also be one of the reasons I don't fill my ISA this year. I wanted to clear that up as I don't want you guys to see it in a video and think, wait, isn't this the frugal spender? What I don't want is this article to shade any of your views on ISAs. Having an ISA is freaking great, but the idea of joining some sort of elite ISA millionaires club isn't. Remember, there's 99.996 of us who aren't in it. I think what would be more interesting is to see how many people have over $1 million in their pension account, which I think would definitely ramp up the numbers. I don't want you to feel pressured into this £1 million ISA target and feel disappointed you can't get there, because most of us won't. It's also not a healthy weight to put on yourself. It's actually pretty toxic. I won't fill my pension this year, and I most likely won't fill my ISA, but we'll see. Don't let these unrealistic standards put pressure on you. I certainly have, and I don't think it's good for anyone. If you are investing, you're absolutely smashing it. I don't know whether I will hit $1 million, follow along and I'll let you know how far I do get. And if you want to see the exact 2 index funds I'm buying to get me there, check out this video where I explain the cheapest way to buy them and why I do it, and I'll catch you over there.